I believe we should do the wall as much as we need. The wall, the E-Verify, the no sanctuary city funding, all the stuff we've talked about, the chain migration. I believe all that should be done for a number of years, and then we can deal with the DACA people. I mean, that's just not going to pass, though. But that's my view. But nevertheless, I do see there's an opportunity for the president to end chain migration, which is a complete travesty. 44% of the million green cards last year were just distant family members of other people who've come into the country without any regard to merit or needing them to do particular work. It's just because. So he has a chance of doing that. And at the same time, he would give a regularized status to those 800,000 36 and below, about from 17 years of age to 36 years of age, people who came here under the age of 18. I think 18, 16, something like that. So he has an opportunity to do that. He told them, I'm not going to do it unless you end chain migration, unless we build a wall. He said he couldn't have been clearer on that. And so they come to his office on a Thursday of last week. Flake preemptively announces the deal is done to try to force Trump's hand. You think Trump's an idiot and he's going to say, oh, Jeff Flake said the deal is done, so I'm just going to say yes to anything. No, of course not. He knew it was a cram down, so he made sure that Bob Goodlatte and Tom Cotton were in that room when Graham and when Graham came into the room, and of course, whatchamacallit, Durbin and Perdue, they walk into the room and they're like, oops, oh, these other people are here that have much better plans than we do, much more in line with what the president wants to say. The president makes some comment about the S-hole countries. And they prance out of the Oval Office. I use that word prance because they act like little babies. They go out of the Oval Office and then they immediately start saying, oh, he said S-hole, S-hole, S-hole. That becomes the narrative for, 4 or 5 days. I couldn't even turn the TV on in my kitchen all weekend long. I usually like to watch the news while I'm cooking breakfast. And I couldn't even do it all weekend long because Maria looked up at one point. She's like, what's S-hole? I'm like, oh, God, can't do that. But they want to sabotage the deal. Raymond Arroyo was with us, and I felt so bad for Raymond last night.
Don't even talk about it.
No, I'm so upset, Raymond. I was right there with you. The fact that, well, let me just say the Saints blew a couple of opportunities. Let's just say that. I mean, they could have been way ahead in that game, but Minnesota ends up winning at the last second with that unbelievable pass down the line, and I was depressed.
No, it was a heartbreaker.
Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Look, the Saints also did have 54 yards worth of penalties, and they did nothing
Horrible
in the first
penalties.
half.
No.
Not 1 point on the board.
No. That I said, I was sitting with my friends of mine, and I said, guys, Drew Brees, Raymond says, is always the fourth quarter guy. He's going to come through in the fourth quarter, watch. And then I thought, and a lot of people left the stadium. They thought it was over. They wanted to beat the traffic. And then all of a sudden, they're leaving, and they hear the score. Oh, no, that was...
No, but it was... I'm telling you,
bad.
People here were firing off fireworks, Laura, at every point the Saints made. People fired off fireworks in the neighborhood. So they were like cheering outside. So when that end happened, it was, you could hear the groans in the street. It was ugly.
Well, what can you do? Well,
that's right. It's just football.
It was depressing. And Pretty Boy, of course, has to trounce too. Pretty Boy and Belichick. I'm getting tired of them.
Well, they're such a good team, but
they're
aren't we tired of having them in the Super Bowl?
I'm just tired of them, whole period. I mean, he's great. He's great. I like Gronkowski because he's Polish. Gronkowski's my favorite. I love him. He cracks me up. I love Gronk, period. Okay? I love him. I think he's fantastic. He gets hurt and he keeps playing. I love him. What is he, 6'6"? He's huge. Oh, my God. I love he jumps up. He can catch a ball like the... He has like a vertical jump. He could have played basketball, no problem. He's just an incredible athlete. But that wasn't even an exciting game. But this was a nail biter. When I saw that, of course, I'm texting Raymond going, "Oh no, he's going to be in a terrible mood." tomorrow. But I was
And
with
I
you.
am.
But Raymond, I was right with you. I wanted Drew Brees in that Super Bowl. I wanted him because I adore him. I love
such
him
a
as a
great
person, and he's just such a great guy. But it's the way it goes. It's a game, as we all. It's just a game. See, I'm already getting preemptively upset because and I know the NFL with Colin Kaepernick, but I love the playoffs. And I get depressed when football season is over. I know James is you still like hockey best of all, James?
No, well,
I'm not a hockey
I'm a big
person.
baseball person.
I
Actually,
like baseball,
but
too.
But yeah, for the most part, I mean, hockey's great. But this is the period of time in
No.
sports when everything starts to slow down.
Yeah,
you have basketball and hockey, and it's not.
No,
it's
I'm
just
not a
the
bad.
same.
I like the Sweet 16. When we get to the Sweet 16 of the college
March
basketball,
Madness, yeah.
we're doing a pool this year, by the way. I always lose badly, but I'll pay for everybody else's contribution, and you guys can divvy it up at the end. But I will tell you that I will lose because I always lose. I think I usually get knocked out in like 3 rounds. I never make it past 3 rounds because I always just kind of think, oh, I like that name. I'll pick that. I don't have any sense about anything when it comes to college basketball. But that was depressing. But the saboteurs in the Democrat Party, how many of you agree with me that this is all just so perfectly timed? We know Dick Durbin has, after railing against the phrase chain migration because he says it's racist, he himself on the floor of the Senate vowed that Dreamers could not benefit from chain migration. He himself used the terminology. Lindsey Graham used the word hellhole to describe Mexico. Barack Obama used the word S-storm to talk about Libya. And all the former presidents from JFK to LBJ to Nixon, I mean, now all of these Democrats are offended by salty language? Since when did they all become prudes? Don't you love that? Oh, please. As if they're setting up Club Meds in Sudan. I mean, give me a break. I mean, their idea of roughing it is... Their idea of roughing it is going to a motel where you don't have Wi-Fi for 12 hours. Okay, so the idea that somehow they're the third world, the affinity to the third world. They've been pushing this line that the third world is better than the United States since I was at Dartmouth. And for some reason, the left is not happy unless they're elevating the third world over the United States on any measurement. They always like the third world. Well, then go live in the third world if you love the third world. If you believe that they really have it going on in Libya or in Egypt or in any of the North African countries, Nigeria, if they really have it going on, then I assume that you're working on setting up entrepreneurial efforts there, spending excessive amounts of vacation time there. I mean, last time I checked, none of these people do that. And even in places like Central America, where I've spent quite a bit of time over the years, going back to the 1980s, my first trip to El Salvador was 1985, during the war. And so I've been going there for many, many years, and I see the place for what it is. It's beautiful in so many ways and so tragic. It's just like Africa. Africa has such innate beauty and such corruption. It is a heartbreaker. So I said on Friday, I wouldn't use that language if I were in closed door session with someone like a Dick Durbin, who is going to stick a knife in your back the second you turn around. The idea of Dick Durbin even being in a meeting with President Trump, given what he has said about our troops and what he has said about the president himself, I mean, that shows an enormous amount of grace on behalf of on the part of the president. I don't think I could be in a room with Dick Durbin. My old radio producer, Lee Habib, in 2005, was the one to find that soundbite of Dick Durbin comparing our troops to Pol Pot and Stalin. I played it on the Angle on Friday. Now, this was I think Lee was like up with his baby or something. His baby had just been born, Reagan, and he was watching C-SPAN, and I think Durbin was on late at night. And he messaged me and he said, "You don't believe what Dick Durbin just said about our troops." And it became and so we're the first radio show to actually air those comments. And People couldn't believe it. He had to ultimately apologize for his comments. But that's much more offensive than anything that President Trump is said to have said about countries that are corrupt and countries that are unable to keep their own people there because they're fleeing corruption and no opportunities and sometimes natural disasters, but it's usually just government corruption and danger, violence. So I'll tell you that if there's someone who's offensive, it's Dick Durbin. 855-40-LAURA. How many of you believe that the Democrats really want Donald Trump to be the president who gives any type of relief to Hispanics or other illegals in the United States? 855-40-LAURA. And do you believe they are sabotaging this effort in order to use it for political purposes? The list of Democrats boycotting the State of the Union is growing. We'll bring you those names. I say when I hear that Auntie Maxine isn't going, the good news keeps rolling in. We'll take a break. 855-40 is now the authority on what is and what is not acceptable to say. The man who himself stole the conscience of a conservative title for his last book from Barry Goldwater, who wrote the seminal book in the 1960s, okay, from his, seminal work. He decided to steal that title. And now he's talking about, Trump is stealing language from the Soviet dictators. And he's doing a big ramp up for this idiotic speech he's giving on Wednesday, once again just reminding us of who really wants the country to improve and who doesn't. Jeff Flake does not want the country to get better. The country is getting better, yet he wants to try to stop Trump in his tracks because he's vindictive, he's spiteful, and for everything that they say about Trump being narcissistic, I don't think I could possibly conceive of someone as narcissistic and out of touch as Jeff Flake himself is.
Will you completely rule out challenging the president for the nomination in 2020?
I won't rule it out. It's not in my plans, but I'm not ruling it out. I don't think anybody should.
Oh, he's so pathetic. He couldn't even win his home state in a primary. You know what it is? He wants to get a gig on MSNBC. He clearly wants to get a show. So he has to show his bona fides. Yeah, I'm resisting Trump, so get me a gig somewhere. Or he wants a gig somewhere. This is his post-Senate planning. This is his resume that he's putting out there. So he's an acceptable Republican. I'm telling you, that's what this is all about. 18% approval in his own state. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. An illegal immigrant is charged in his bus threat. We'll bring you that story. Fox is all over it. Of course, CNN and MSNBC aren't even covering it. And we have a lot more. We're going to talk in a few minutes to Niger Innis from the Congress of Racial Equality, the true legacy of Martin Luther King. And, of course, Niger's dad was a seminal leader in the civil rights movement, has since passed away, but amazing person. We have a lot to get to. We'll do it together on the Laura Ingraham Show. If you're a veteran and haven't used your VA benefits, with interest rates this low, now is the time to get into a new home or maybe refinance. And with the VA loan, there's no mortgage insurance, zero down payment, and relaxed credit requirements. Buying a home versus renting, that'll give you the benefit of saving money every month. Then they'll get you a pre-approval letter fast, so you know how much home you qualify for, and you can pre-qualify in 10 minutes. You can close in as fast as 10 days, and their quick home refinancing process can help you access cash, drop mortgage insurance, consolidate your high-interest debt, or even spend less on interest rates as they remain low and home values are growing. It's simple, and it just takes a 10-minute call to get started. Enjoy savings of $500 to $1,000 a month, plus no upfront fees, and you may not even need an appraisal, saving you time and more money. Call American Financing at 800-852-2010 or go to AmericanFinancing.net. That's American Finance. You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Well, when Al Sharpton speaks, we're all supposed to stand up and cheer. The man who would be out of a job if racism is actually done away with in the United States. Al Sharpton depends on racism existing, because without racism, where is he? He's just another talking head on television. Again, it's a nightmare. The idea that the black unemployment is at a historic low, it's the lowest it's been since they began recording and tracking black unemployment. Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, Hispanic-owned businesses. We're seeing record improvement with the rise in income. Stock market continues to climb. This is truly a rising tide lifts all boats. Again, a nightmare scenario for the Democrats. So they have to go back to, he's a racist, he's a racist, he's a racist. Be angry, be upset, resist, resist, resist. That's all they have. What else are they going to say?
It's not even in America's interest to insult African countries, aside from the fact that it's blatantly racist. If you look at the fact that the United States has intelligence operations all over Africa because they need to combat ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Do you imagine what the ISIS operatives are doing today, going around telling people don't cooperate with American intelligence against us? They think you all live in S houses or S holes.
Oh, like he's never said that word. I mean, come on. That guy is just the biggest fraud. Let's go to Father Jose in Florida. Father Jose, go ahead.
Hello, Laura. Can you hear me?
I got you, man. Put the phone up to your ear, though, because speakerphones don't work well on talk radio.
Okay, I'm on Bluetooth.
Yeah, that doesn't work well.
Let me try.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just sit here while we wait for you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, my God.
Laura's not working.
Yeah, sweetie, I can hear you. You just have to speak. All right, he can't hear. The Bluetooth thing just doesn't work. I mean, God bless. Let's go to Sarah in Connecticut on line 5. Miss Sarah, hopefully she is not. I would hope she is not on a Bluetooth. Sarah.
I'm not on a Bluetooth.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
So listen, I just want to say that I completely agree with you. You know, I wish more people would see exactly what the left, what the Dems are doing. They're hurting these same people in the country that they're claiming that they want to protect by constantly drilling that into their heads, that Trump is a racist, that we're all racist. And I truly believe that they know exactly what they're doing. And that's not caring about the people or the country. And it's all a game to them. And I just don't understand when it became a game running this government.
Black Americans have a choice to make. They can look at their pocketbooks, their bottom line, see, is the country doing better? And do you have greater opportunity to get work, to get a job? Is your life improving? Has it improved more over the last year than it did, frankly, over the last several years? I think probably the answer should be yes, I think. And maybe at that point, tune out some of the naysayers and the folks who peddle perpetual negativity and ask why. Why do they want you angry? Why do they want you to resist? Why? How do they benefit from keeping you angry? Well, they keep raising money on your anger. They keep raising money on claims of racism. And the sooner people understand that this in the end is all about power, getting back power, they want power, then I think you'll have a much better understanding of what's really going on. They can't debate the facts that the economy is humming, that Trump is actually doing the things that other presidents said they'd do and never did, including renegotiate NAFTA. Barack Obama said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA, never did. By the way, the news just came in that last year China had the greatest trade surplus with the United States in recorded history. Do you think it's time to do a different type of trade regime with China? You think we should start cracking down on cheating and intellectual property theft? I do. We can't keep going the way we're going, or China will be the dominant superpower in the world. And it has the biggest army already, standing army, bigger than ours, 2.1 million individuals. Joining us now is Niger Innis. He heads the Congress of Racial Equality, is a national spokesperson, and we're delighted he's with us. He joins us now. Niger, how are you? Good to talk to you. You're great on TV last week with me. Thanks for joining us.
It was my pleasure. My pleasure. Happy Martin Luther King Day.
Absolutely. On this day, it is ironic and depressing that this is where we are in politics, that the president describing countries that can't even keep their people happy enough to want to stay, so he calls them S-holes, behind closed doors. Obviously, it was a private conversation. And that's spun into Trump's a racist. And that's how people are I guess, some people are marking Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, and it's particularly unfortunate. And of course, just speaking on the president having a private conversation and that confidence being betrayed by Durbin and maybe by others. It reminds me of what Harry Truman said, that if you want to get a good friend in Washington, D.C., get a dog. I think the president comes from the business world where, you have these types of conversations behind closed doors and confidences are kept. And welcome to Washington, D.C., where this kind of game can be played. Look, Laura, I've been talking about this. I've been talking about this for some 15, 20 years, which is there is a race extortion game where the race card is used as a dramatic weapon of destruction. And that's what's going on right now against the president. And it is unfortunate because you have, after we had 8 years of a guy who sounded great, made wonderful promises, wonderful speeches, looked the part, could sing, could dance, all the rest of that. Chicago, there are places in southwest Chicago right now where it is probably safer to be walking the streets of Kabul, Afghanistan, or Iraq than it is in southwest Chicago. And this is a president that not only was president of the United States and, of course, was from Chicago, his adopted Chicago, but he sent his former chief of staff to become mayor, who's still mayor of Chicago. And amongst the biggest failures of the last president, President Obama, that to me is the one that really sticks in my craw, because he truly very easily could have done something about that mess, and he did nothing. And now you have a president that is, at least in terms of the economy, bringing back jobs. Black unemployment rate is record lows. The stock market, of course, is booming, and we haven't even seen the dividends and the positive ways that are going to come from this historic tax cut. And nevertheless, these folk are nitpicking him every chance they get, every opportunity they get, to call him a bigot, to call him a racist, to call him stupid, to call him crazy. I don't even think Ronald Reagan got this treatment.
No, it's now at the point where it's toxic, poisonous, but also comical, because when things are so markedly improving across the board. I mean, we've gone over black unemployment. We've gone over black home ownership rising, entrepreneurship rising for cross-minority communities. The ability to get loans is easier now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. This is all great stuff. And yet there are a number of individuals who keep this drumbeat of racism going, in my mind, minimizing true racism and marginalizing the true meaning of and understanding of what real racism is. And they do it because they need to keep power. And they're worried. I think they're desperately worried that this president will, in the end, have done more for African Americans and Hispanics than the last 3 presidents perhaps combined. I think they're terrified of that prospect.
They are horrified. They're horrified of that prospect. They're certainly horrified that this president, who actually did marginally better in the black vote than Mitt Romney did when he ran in 2012, that they are terrified that this president gets somewhere north of 10 to 15% of the black vote. And they're terrified because if that happens, then it is, first of all, mathematically, electorally impossible for a Democrat to win if President Trump should garner over 10% of the black vote, approaching 15% of the black vote. But more than that, it's because they are so invested in having a monopoly of the black vote, and that monopoly is based on blacks forever seeing themselves as victims, forever seeing themselves as victims of racism, of economic depravity, of the white man, and that point of view, if we should ever liberate ourselves from that point of view, we not only win one election for President Trump, we become an existential threat to the future of the Democrat Party.
We're talking to Niger Innes here on the Laura Ingraham Show. It's Martin Luther King Day. Your dad was from St. Croix, correct? He was
That's
born
right.
there. He was St. Croix.
Uh-huh.
I remember watching.
Certainly was.
Yeah, I remember watching some of his old interviews and trying to pick up that accent. I'm like, what is that accent? I love guessing accents. So I thought, it sounds like it could be Caribbean.
He came to New York at 12 years old.
Still had it.
And in 70 years, I think he refused. I think that was an act of defiance.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to keep my accent. But I know it's bittersweet because he died about a year ago, and he had Parkinson's disease. Tell me what your dad, of course, is a well-known activist. He was a libertarian. He thought about running for governor of New York at one point. And he had that classic smackdown, literally, of Al Sharpton that is still one of my favorite highlights on YouTube, which we got to link that up. Put it on our Facebook page, the Roy Innes literally taking down Al Sharpton. It was hilarious. Anyway,
and he did it when Al had a heck of a lot more heft.
Yeah, Al was quite portly back then. But what would your dad think about what's happening today in this? It's not really a debate. It's just a demonization.
Well, he fought against this, before I did. And, we both generationally have been fighting against this demonization and this false use of the race card. And, look, I call it, and I have called it, the Sharptonization, named after Al Sharpton, my father's former wrestling buddy, the Al Sharptonization of American politics. And you now not only have it with race, you have it with gender, you have it with just about everything. I mean, just found out that Chelsea Manning now is, who is a traitor to our country, has used his new status, I guess, as an hyphenated victim to now run for office.
Oh, everybody is. This is. Everybody's a victim.
It is comical.
Everybody's a victim. No, I mean, you can't claim victim status, then. It's like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it doesn't really fall. If you're not a victim, do you even exist today?
That's it.
I don't actually think you exist if you're not claiming some type of oppression or victim status. You don't really exist as a human being, and you really don't deserve any respect or individuality or any of that. Niger, I loved having you on last week. Come back soon. And you are just such a beacon of light and positivity and optimism, and we just love you. So thanks so much, and I hope you have a meaningful Martin Luther King Day. Thanks again for joining us.
You too, Laura. Take care.
All right, we'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40. The voters abandoning Donald Trump. There was kind of a negative piece about 4 or 5 days ago in the Atlantic. But buried in the piece, the third paragraph from the bottom. Among African Americans and Hispanics, reactions to Trump depend on gender, age, or education. The outlier here is black men. Among black women, there's disapproval among Trump. Still, black men are one of the few groups for which Trump's 2017 average approval rating significantly exceeds his 2016 voter share. That's interesting. Curious that wasn't really publicized. Third from the bottom paragraph. So wait, if they were 20, I have a question. Now, this is a serious matter, obviously, but if you're 20 minutes off the beach of Hawaii, it's unclear why you actually want to go back back to Hawaii. I'd stay on the water. Happy Martin Luther King Day. I hope everybody's having a meaningful day. We're working. That was a wild 40 minutes where the emergency alert system sent out those scary texts that have that sound and basically incoming. What are you supposed to do? There's a missile coming in. Okay, get on the ground. People were panic, crying, screaming, running.
We put the baby in the bathroom, didn't know what else to do, and the stroller in case we had to run.
At least 2 hours afterwards, I was shaking, and it was scary, very scary.
Yeah, well, here's the good side. I always like to look on the bright side, right, Raymond? I'm kind of a glass half full person.
Oh, an optimist all round.
So this is what I want to say this. Look on the bright side. The alert system does work. It did reach everyone, just happened to be the wrong message. But if we were wondering whether people would actually get texts, they did get texts. Not only that, but the warning on radio, and I guess were there voicemail messages? I heard the actual verbal warning. It included a grammatical error that, well, a dear friend that Raymond knows called me on my home number, and she said, Laura, you're the only person I can tell this to, but can you believe they said that people should lay down on the floor instead of lie down? The fact that they can't even get the warning to be grammatical is really oh no. And then Jamie Lee, Where Are My Leg Warmers, Curtis. She really hasn't done better since she did on that aerobics movie she was in, right? What was that called?
Halloween. I think she's doing Halloween 30. She actually is doing a sequel to Halloween.
But didn't she have an aerobics movie? It was 5, 6, 7, 8. Didn't
Maybe she did for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think she was just trying to catch up with Jane Fonda.
Yeah, no, but she had an aerobics movie. So if you want to, tell me what it is, James. It was so stupid. It was during the aerobics phase. I never could stand aerobics, by the way. But Jamie Lee Curtis was blaming Trump. Do you have the tweet, Raymond? Donald Trump. This happened on Donald Trump's watch, and Donald Trump's going to blow up the world, and Donald Trump. And of course, we find out that it's not Donald Trump at all. It was this. Someone just had fat fingers or something, and they pushed the wrong button. What actually happened?
What happened is it was just a staffer who pressed the button, and then there was a confirm, and they did it again. I don't know if they thought it was a drill. It's all still kind of murky and unclear, but it was a false missile alert, obviously.
Well, when you send out an alert, it probably shouldn't give people. Did anyone actually have a heart attack?
I don't think so.
That would be bad.
By the way, Laura, the movie you were talking about was Perfect with John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis, 1985.
Oh, that was classic. That was like the year, like The Breakfast Club and all those other classic movies of the 80s. Pretty in Pink.
19% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, it's the worst. It was the worst movie. So Jamie Lee Curtis blaming Trump. Sean Penn.
She said, this Hawaii missile scare is on you, Mr. Trump. The real fear that mothers and fathers and children felt is on you. It is your arrogance, hubris, narcissism, rage, ego, immaturity, and your unstable idiocy. Shame on your hate-filled self. You did this. Now, well, it turns out the Democratic governor of Hawaii, David Ng, was actually the guilty party.
Wait, why? Why was he the guilty party?
Well, it's people under him. They were the ones responsible for this. It was a Democratic regime. That's who's in charge in Hawaii. It's not like Donald Trump's or Ivanka is running around, on Maui running the place.
People were texting and tweeting, what do we do? Where do we go? I was thinking, what would I do? I'd probably just, I don't know, get the kids in the basement and start saying the rosary. I mean, what do you do? I mean... if a missile's coming to town, it's not like you're going to escape the thing. Go in the basement, watch Netflix, and pray. Watch Netflix and pray. Watch Netflix. I don't know if that'd be the first thing I'd do, but I'd get some...
What else are you going to do? Calm down, have a drink.
And get a bottle of Hendrix, some supplies, and go downstairs in the basement.
There you go. You see, we in New Orleans are accustomed to dealing with natural disasters or man-made ones. You just kind of, go to the nearest bar, see some friends, pray, sing a song, and have a good time.
But if I were on a boat, I don't think I'd go back to shore necessarily, unless
that's not a smart.
Unless your family is, I guess. But I'd just stay on the boat. I mean, is there going to be a tsunami caused by the missile? I mean,
the governor Ig
or In? What is it? In or Ig?
It's IGE. I don't quite know how to pronounce it. I think it's Ig.
It's like Iggy Pop or Ig. Isn't that an interesting question?
Let's call him Ig for now.
Okay, Ig.
David Ig issued a statement on Sunday apologizing again for the bungled alert. I can personally assure each and every resident and visitor that steps have been already taken by the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency to ensure that a situation like this will never happen again. So it was the Democratic governor who took the bullet for it.
Yeah, well, it is idiotic. I mean, the fact that could go out, the fact that it took 40 minutes to correct.
Right.
You know, I'm wondering if when this happened, if people started texting loved ones and then confessing to things that they feel like they had to confess to, got on the phone with priests or friends. Oh, by the way, and then all of a sudden it's all like, oops, I wish I didn't confess that. It's not all over. But people apparently just didn't know what it was a bit of panic. And Drudge has this link that people were putting children in storm drains. I mean, people could have died because of this stupid false alarm. Children could have died by parents doing dumb things like putting them in storm drains. So it's kind of funny, but it's not funny because it puts people's lives in jeopardy and it's not, Anyway, let's go to Anthony in Alabama, who is responding to the demonization of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a racist. This is what a man who is fairly close friends with Oprah. For how many years have they been friends? I don't know, 2 or 3 decades, which is why she did that interview with him during the early part of, when was that last interview she did of him? There was one she did in 1987, but then she did another one with Donald Trump, I believe, right before she signed off. But they were friends for a long time.
I know Trump said it was like a week, the week before her show ended, they had on the whole family on her show.
Right. So, I mean, the idea of Donald Trump being a racist, he might say things that people don't want him to say and stuff that everybody else is thinking about certain places that are really corrupt. And I get that. I wouldn't have said it that way either. Not when you have tricky Dick Durbin in the room. I wouldn't have said it. But he doesn't say it the right way for some people. But to say he's a racist, that's just weak. Anthony, go ahead.
Well, if a person is not, then they're not. But if you say least, that means that there's a degree. And these was his chosen words.
Do you think that Sudan is a place that is like a destination spot for people to vacation or emigrate to, Anthony?
I agree that the places it has bad economics, but I wouldn't classify it as a
whole. Yeah,
whole. I wouldn't do that.
Well, okay, that's fine. I wouldn't either. But they're hellholes. That's why people are fleeing. And South Sudan, the people that we know who are missionaries and doing work there, they visit villages that Boko Haram and ISIS have been running through that treat their residents with flamethrowers and light women and children on fire. They lock them into huts and light them on fire because they're Christian. I'd call that a hellhole. I'd call it a hellhole when people who are even educated don't want to stay because there's no economic opportunity because the leaders of those countries steal the money for themselves. I'd call that a hellhole. So I think Trump is, again, salty language, as if any of these Democrats never heard salty language coming from their offices or from the likes of Ted Kennedy, Chris Dodd, or all these other liberal lions of the Senate. And by the way, Ted Kennedy himself said in 1965, no, don't worry, we're not going to flood America with these African countries with this new immigration bill. So why was he saying don't worry? Because he obviously knew that was going to be a problem. So I say if Donald Trump's a racist, man, he really was able to hide it for decades and decades and decades in public life. As far as I could tell, they couldn't find one minority who worked for Donald Trump. Of the tens of thousands of people he has employed over his career, who gave an interview, not one interview with an employee or former employee, as far as I can remember, that indicated that he was anything but professional and a fair boss, and someone who actually cared about the people who work for him. So, wow. I mean, if he's a racist, that's pretty amazing that he was able to cover it up all those years. Let's go to David in New Jersey on line 1. David, welcome.
Hey, Laura. I want to see Congress change our dated immigration system. Why not make DACA part of the RAISE Act?
Yeah, well, that's what we've been saying on television. I mean, pretty much everything in the RAISE Act, E-Verify, sanctuary cities, chain migration, lottery system. And Trump believes in all of that. He's focused on the wall, chain migration, and sanctuary cities. But definitely, chain migration is the biggest problem. I can tell you that. That and, obviously we want to stop people from being able to come here and get benefits. The whole birth tourism, that all has to be shut down. But chain migration has to be stopped. That is what is truly demographically changing our country in a way that I do not think is healthy. It's when people say our greatest value is our diversity. Really? I think our greatest value is freedom, independence, sovereignty. I don't see the word diversity as the hallmark of our founding documents. Diversity. It's independence, freedom. But David, I agree with you. The RAISE Act, which Tom Cotton and Perdue wrote together, they sponsored together, is brilliant. And I think the RAISE Act should pass separate from any DACA deal. But the RAISE Act is a must. I could not agree with you more. Let's go to Jim in Connecticut. And I want to remind you all, which I'll do in a minute, of what Dick Durbin said in 2005 that this show and no other exposed at the time, which will give you some insight into his character. Jim.
How Dick Durbin couldn't wait to run to the microphones to start all this garbage that they always do. It's a closed-door meeting trying to solve the problems. Donald Trump is trying to keep this country, he's trying to bring the country back to the reason why people come to this country. Dick Durbin, I can't take any of them no more. Drain these guys. Get rid of these guys. I love Donald Trump. Thank God this guy's in. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I think that the facts, whether that fact we just brought you about African-American support, where we have high support. When I say high, I mean double the amount of support he actually got in the general election from African-American men today. It's striking. That's a striking fact. That's troubling for the Democrats, because if he's able to peel off just 5% more of support among African-American men, that spells big trouble. Now, he's not doing well among African-American women, but he's doing really well, considering he's a Republican, among African-American men. I think that's a state of panic for the Democrats. So they have to go back to the only card they have to play. It's the race card. 855-40-LAURA. We'll take a break, get your reaction to all of this and a lot more on Martin Luther King Day. And if you think of missiles about to hit your homeland, do you find God? Do you remember God? I bet a lot of people did. I bet there were a lot of prayers happening from people who hadn't prayed in a long time. I understand my sons are listening in a car. A friend of mine is driving them back from the beach. The beach meaning Delaware, and they're listening. So I got to be on good behavior if my boys are listening. Hi, boys. All right, let's go to the lines. Lindsey Graham has no problem using tough language when describing countries like Mexico. Let's go to Vivian in Florida. Vivian, welcome.
Thank you. To me, the biggest racist in the White House was Obama. He didn't like white Americans, and he didn't like black Americans. He only tolerated them so he could get the votes.
Why do you say that?
You could tell by how... did he ever visit or try to do anything in the black neighborhoods of like Detroit or even Illinois, the Chicago area? It was so obvious. It was so blatant. Yeah,
he did that My Brother's Keeper initiative, I remember, but I don't know exactly what that accomplished. I like the comment, though. Eve in Arizona on line 5. Eve lived in Hawaii. She's now in beautiful AZ. Go ahead.
Yes, the governor of Hawaii's name is pronounced Ige.
Ige, okay, thank you.
Ige, yes, and he's rerunning for office. Good luck on that one. He and Mayor Caldwell spent $9.8 billion on a rail in Hawaii that runs 20 miles. The whole infrastructure of Hawaii is in shambles.
It's coconuts. Infrastructure is 2 coconuts with a string together, apparently. I appreciate it. We'll get to all the calls, 855-40-LAURA. Harmeet Dillon's going to give us the latest on Google's discrimination against a conservative engineer. Don't go away. But he's right. They don't want a deal. I said this on Friday. My angle was very clear. If the Democrats wanted a deal, they wouldn't have insulted the president and the process by prancing into the Oval Office with Tricky Dick Durbin and Open Borders Graham and in not giving him even the baseline of what he said he needed, which was ending chain migration and real funding for border enforcement, including the wall. They didn't do either. And so the president basically said, no. And then they ran out, skipped out, and they went to trash the president and said, he said, S-hole, da-da. And they want to sabotage it because it's a nightmare for them. They want to be the ones to deliver all these successes to minority voters. And now it's Trump. Trump's the one who's delivering all the goods, meaning opportunity, to minority voters by not condescending to them or trying to take advantage of them, but by enacting the right policies that free up our markets and allow people to take care of themselves. That is the magic of his economic policy, and it's what, we'd hoped that other presidents would do and didn't. So he's doing it. People's lives are getting better, and the Democrats are freaking. 855-40-LAURA. We'll get to all your calls in just a minute. We'll get to them. Just be patient. We're going to check in with Harmeet Dillon, who's very busy these days. She's representing that conservative engineer, James Damore, who was fired unceremoniously from Google. And she has a lawsuit against Google because looks like Google fired him because he was a conservative. Viewpoint discrimination. And what does that all mean for big tech? Big brother, big tech, big government, big tech, they all work together. And we're going to talk to her about DACA and the saboteurs in the Democrat Party and among the Open Borders Republicans. She joins us now. Harmeet, great to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here, Laura.
Let's talk about the DACA deal and what the president had offered to do. Namely, we'll give relief to these and certainty to these 800,000 people, but they can't then turn around and sponsor second cousins twice removed. We can't worsen the problem of chain migration, and we need real funding for that wall. They came in, they didn't give them either thing. In fact, they would have expanded chain migration under the Durbin deal, and the president said no go, and then they moved to race.
Well, you summarized it well, Laura. The backdrop here is that we have a lot of litigation going on in the courts, and there's litigation in the Fifth Circuit, the Second Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit over details of DACA and DAPA, and a little bit of review of the last few months. But the Fifth Circuit struck down something similar to what Durbin and his league are trying to do here, and they said DAPA, which was for the parents of these dreamers, which is allowing 4.3 million people to come into the country legally and have work, residency, and all of that, and work permits, that was overbroad and violated the law. And so, legally, the Dems have been stopped from achieving that goal that President Obama tried to put into place. And so some kind of sneaky deal like this is the only way. And it's like the camel's nose in the tent, because the DACA people by now are under 700,000. Some of them have left the country, so it's actually under 700,000. But when you add the parents, not even all their relatives, the parents, that's about 4.3 million. So that makes it 5 million. And then, as you say, if we keep chain migration intact, that can multiply by several times. It's a huge explosion on the nice PR face of people who came here when they were children. So it's a disaster. I'm proud to see the president holding strong on that after starting the week with some rhetoric that kind of disturbed me and I think you and other conservatives.
Well, I think that what we'll see in the coming days is a ramp up of the rhetoric by the Democrats, who will, who will go to DEFCON 1, meaning they will launch against this president unlike anything you've seen because they are desperate to get back into power. And they will do and say anything to do it, and they will frighten minority voters. They will try to make them feel insecure about their future. If they can Photoshop in a KKK hat on the president, they'll do that. I mean, it's just they can't go any lower. And the New York Times today, there's a photo below the fold: Trump, race, and anxiety. A day before Martin Luther King's birthday, black churchgoers saw America slipping back into an ugly past. It's like nothing has ever happened that's good. Nothing. Oh, I mean, in the last year, nothing good has happened for black America. Charles Blow, Trump is a racist, period. That's the title of his column today. Trump is a racist, period. Go back to Harmeet in just a moment. Let's go to Charlie in Nevada on line 3. Charlie.
Hi, Laura. I'd like to tell you a real legislative deal that, if put on the table, would give Democrats victory and give Republicans victory this midterm election season. Okay, giving us DACA alone will not be enough for us to agree to Trump's agenda in his immigration reform bill. I'll tell you right now the deal that we will sign, though, if you're interested. If you give us DACA and you have Trump sign our bill that we just put into the House, H.R. 975, which legalizes recreational marijuana only for the states that voted for it, not nationally. That bill is H.R. 975, okay? If he's willing to sign that deal and give us DACA, it'll be a win-win for both parties, and we'll both make history together, okay? A deal that
Did you smoke this morning?
Only one-sided.
Did you smoke anything this morning? You sound very hyped up about this, but you should be mellow about it, I guess, if you're doing the pot. Do you smoke regularly? You sound like you do.
Well,
you
smoke.
do.
No,
you smoke. You use pot, right? It's no big deal. Everybody's doing it. Apparently, it's no big deal. So I'm not judging you. Believe me, if you do, I'm not judging you at all. It's you're destroying your brain and destroying your livelihood and probably killing your lungs and your esophagus. But if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But DACA and pot, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. Wow. I thought he was going to say, we got to give the Dreamers pot. I thought that's what he was going to say. That's where he was going with if only the Dreamers also get amnesty and pot. What? Harmeet Dillon, you never know what you're going to get. This is why live radio is always so much fun. But he kind of hesitated. I said, do you smoke this morning? Let me buy a vowel on that. Harmeet.
Well, Laura, the pot point is an interesting one because I'm sitting here and I can see Mendocino, and I'm sitting in Sonoma County. The biggest industry here in this area is marijuana cultivation, and a lot of people from the undocumented community here in California are actually the workers who pick those crops. And so California's politicians have a vested interest in making sure that economy flourishes, and they need the support of these people for that. So there's a lot of complicated issues.
Oh, yeah, because the way to pave America's prosperity and glorious future is in the pot planting across the country. That's going to
California.
That's going to because we want to go the direction of California. We want there's a big piece in the LA Times about California and poverty today and the welfare state in California. And I don't care how much pot. You can grow pot from Southern California all the way up to Eureka, okay? You can do that in California. And pot ain't going to deliver it from big government problems. I can tell you that right now. That is not going to happen. That's but right. I mean, again, this is the nirvana. The left's nirvana is the drug culture, abortion, I guess LGBTQ. That's nirvana. Okay. Again, just look at California. I mean, I love California. It's a beautiful place, but it's suffering from huge, huge, huge problems. Taxes. Forget the natural disasters. poor people in California can't prevent that. But the welfare, the undocumented population exploded in California. And now they think pot's going to solve all their problems. Harmeet, give us a update on the Google case with James Damore, who we've seen appear with you with regularity. The liberal groupthink of Google. Tell us about it. We seem to have lost Harmeet. All right, we'll take a break. 855-40-LAURA. A lot more to get to, including, by the way, the real legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Lee Habib wrote a great piece for LifeZette. Don't buy into the secularized view of King's legacy. The secular King is, frankly, not the most meaningful, lasting impression of the man that you should get. Deeply religious, a man of deep faith, and what his faith told him in times of deep crisis. We'll get into all of that coming up. It's very interesting to look at the coverage of the man on Martin Luther King Day. We don't tend to focus on his faith, his belief in God, but that was the most important part of his life. People say, well, he's a civil rights leader. Oh, of course he was, but his faith led him to that. Lee Habib's piece in LifeZette is fantastic. I just tweeted it out. It's called The Secularization of Martin Luther King Jr. Here's how the mainstream media often strip faith out of his life and how he and Malcolm X battled for the soul of America. It's a story you won't hear anywhere this week as the life of MLK is celebrated, a story for the battle of the soul of a nation between King and his rival, Malcolm X. It was a battle between a Baptist preacher and a Nation of Islam disciple. And if you listen carefully, what you'll hear is deafening silence about the one element of King's life without which none of his efforts would have been possible. His devotion to his faith and his God, his devotion to Jesus Christ. To most Christians, the Bible is like a software license, Bill Maher once explained. Nobody actually reads it. They just scroll down to the bottom and click, I agree. But Reverend Martin Luther King thought differently. Indeed, he found the Bible so compelling that his undergraduate degree was in Bible studies and his PhD was in theology. To King, the Bible wasn't a software license, it was a software code, a deep, mysterious code authored by God for man's eternal soul. Leaving God out of Martin Luther King's life, a friend once told me, is like leaving naked women out of Hugh Hefner's. It's like leaving the story of segregation out of Jackie Robinson's. But that doesn't stop the media from redacting any and all references to the source of King's inspiration. You'll hear endless references to King all this week and today, of course, but never to Reverend King. The clips you'll hear and videos you'll see will be King's stirring secular rhetoric. What you won't hear are the parts of King's speeches filled with references to God or the book from which sprang the source of this man's devotion to justice. It was the Bible. You won't hear any mention of this in the media, and that's how deep the antipathy toward all things Christian runs throughout the press. You won't hear a single word from King's remarkable speech called A Knock at Midnight, a speech any 4-year-old can find on Google. King started the speech with a quote from Luke 11, chapter 11, verses 5 and 6. Which of you who has a friend will go to him at midnight and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has arrived on a journey, and I have nothing to set before him. He then leapt right into the speech, saying, Although this parable is concerned with the power of persistent prayer, it may also serve as a basis for our thought concerning many contemporary problems and the role of the church in grappling with them. It is midnight in the parable. It is also midnight in our world, and the darkness is so deep that we can hardly see which way to turn. It is midnight within the social order. He went on to say that moral principles have lost their distinctiveness. For modern man, absolute right and wrong are just a matter of what the majority is doing. Right and wrong are relative to likes and dislikes and customs of a particular community. We've unconsciously applied Einstein's theory of relativity, which properly described the physical universe, but we're using it now to describe the moral and ethical realm. This mentality has brought a tragic breakdown of moral standards, and the midnight of moral degeneration deepens.